Well, wow, what a wonderful turnout. We're so happy that you're here with us today. Of course, we are so pleased that we have a special guest. Mr. John Pappajohn is here with us today. We thought we'd have a little area here for sort of a little conversation and allow him to sit. We had him on a tour around campus earlier, and he got to see a lot of our campus, from our clinic to our simulation lab, and so we're really pleased that we now have an opportunity to hear his story. Most of you are quite familiar with Mr. Pappajohn, and you see the Pappajohn Sculpture Park. You know a lot about him from being in this community. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about his background. Of course, he has an impressive resume and list of accomplishments that you will probably hear in a different kind of way when it comes directly from him as he shares his story. He, of course, grew up in Mason City, Iowa. He immigrated from Greece at the age of 9 months old. So he was just a baby when he came to the United States and grew up in Mason City. So he's truly an Iowan, graduated from the University of Iowa, and then the rest of the story will be told by Mr. John Pappajohn. So it's a treat for us to have him here, and I'm just going to turn things over to Mr. John Pappajohn.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to be 87 next month. And so, at my age, I'm happy to be anywhere, so you all understand. As President Franklin stated, 9 months ago, I immigrated from Greece, Mason City, Iowa. It was a wonderful place to grow up. My father had a corner grocery store, and it was right across the street from a grade school. 29 different nationalities attended my grade school. So I grew up with Russians, Hungarians, Bulgarians, Greeks, Italians, all of the Latinos, all of the blacks. We all lived together in one area, and everybody got along. Everybody got along at that time. It was amazing. Few fights once in a while, but everybody got along. My grade school was terrific. We had good teachers, and we had a very unusual principal. His name was Henry Prendergast. He ended up being superintendent of schools in Mason City, and he had an interest in the students. He had a real interest in the students. He wanted all of us to do well, and the teachers spent time with us. I have the distinction of having to go to kindergarten for 2 years because I couldn't speak any English. Now you have to understand, in an immigrant family, my mother spoke only Greek. She didn't speak English at the time. And so my kindergarten teacher wanted to adopt me because she hadn't had anybody spend 2 years in kindergarten before. Anyway, but great place to grow up. I had a normal, I guess, upbringing, but I grew up being an entrepreneur. As a young man, I did everything. I was a junker. I used to junk lead, copper, brass. The scrap yard was only 1 block from where I grew up, my home. And I was the best customer of Harry Wolf. Harry Wolf ended up being kind of a mentor to me. He liked me. He had 2 sons. One, Charles, went to Harvard, undergraduate, MBA, PhD, and he taught economics at Harvard. And his mother didn't want him to spend any time in the scrapyard. And the other son went to Stanford, and he ended up with several degrees. Wonderful family. But Henry Wolf took me to the bank and helped me get my first line of credit. And that was a long ways. But anyway, growing up, in addition to being a junker, we all worked in my father's grocery store. And I used to work there from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. And my father used to pay me 25 cents a day. That was my salary. But anyway, we had a garden, and a 2 or 3 acre garden. So we provided vegetables, and we sold them directly through the grocery store. So we raised everything you can grow in a garden, including okra, eggplant, zucchinis, sweet corn, potatoes, cantaloupes, watermelon, everything. It was a depression when I grew up, and it was really a tough time. And we would have people come in and steal potatoes and onions. We used to save chicken feet so people could make chicken soup. We used to save soup bones so people could make soup. But again, everybody got along, and everybody helped everybody else. It was interesting because we would have multiple break-ins in my father's grocery store, and we used to try to figure out where to hide the cash overnight where people couldn't find it. So we would hide it in the meat cooler, and they found it in the meat cooler. We used to hide it in multiple places. But anyway, eventually we decided the best thing to do was to leave enough money in the cash register that they could get enough money to be happy, and they would take it. And anyway, so it was we never called the police, and the police never came to try to catch anybody. As I grew up being an entrepreneur, I used to fantasize a lot. I'm a dreamer. I've always dreamt, always wanted to be rich. I used to tell my mother when I grew up I was going to be rich. And my mother used to nod her head. She thought that was a good idea. But I went from grade school to high school, and along the way something very traumatic changed my life. When I was 16 years old, my father had a heart attack and died. And it was ultimately ended up being one of the best things that happened to me as a young man. And I used to discuss it with my mother. She understood, because at 16 I became the head of the household. I had two younger brothers. One was 2 years younger, and one was 5 years younger. My brothers' names, by the way, were Aristotle and Socrates. Good Greek names. And so we used to have board meetings when we grew up at home to figure out how we were going to survive. And we all got along well, and we helped each other. I went on to high school. When I graduated from high school, we took turns working through college. So I went to a community college for 2 years. I worked a year, went to community college for a year. My brother alternated with me. So we all got through community college, and then I went to the University of Iowa. It took me 6 years to get a degree, and I got a degree, and I didn't have any debt because I worked every day at the University of Iowa. I was a butcher, and my brothers and I, our first real profession was chicken pluckers. And you have to understand, we think we plucked 50,000 chickens by hand over a period of 10 years. And in those days, they didn't grow chickens down in the southern part of the country, broilers. We would go out to the farm, chase the chickens, put them in a coop, bring them back to the store, weigh them, and we would pay the farmer for the chickens, and then we would butcher the chickens in our grocery store. We used to do a couple of hundred chickens every week. We used to butcher turkeys. We would do geese, ducks, whatever it was, and that's how we made a living. Whatever we could do to create value. But again, I go back, I graduated from Iowa, and I had $2,000 in the bank, working at a grocery store every day, every morning before classes. Every noon, I used to eat all of the smoked carp and salami I could eat. That was my lunch every day. I worked every day after classes and all day Saturday. And it was a wonderful Jewish delicatessen. The people were wonderful to me. And so I graduated $2,000. And one of the problems that you all have is debt. Debt is a killer. And I'm just telling you, when I got out of school, I could invest my money and start out making money. And you all have debt. And that debt is so hard to pay after taxes. And so I'm pleading with you, don't borrow any more money than you have to. Because I'm hiring doctors today in urgent care centers. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. I'm buying urgent care centers. And I can hire doctors for $100,000 a year. And after taxes, you can't afford to pay off all that debt. You'll have family, you'll have children. Your spouse is going to want a car. You'll need 2 cars. It's just going to be awful for you. So I'm just telling you, be careful, be prudent. Don't spend more money than you have to. And penalize yourself to the extent that when you get out, you have less debt. It is a major, major obstacle in your future. I will tell you that. I will tell you that for sure. So anyway, I started out, and I went in the insurance business because it didn't take any money. And I became an insurance man, and then I started a life insurance company, the Guardsman Life in Des Moines, Iowa. I went public. It was my first public company. I've taken 50 companies public over the years. I've started 30 medical companies along the way, and I'll tell you about some of them in a little bit. But I didn't like insurance. It was boring. And so I looked for a new business, and I heard about a new business called venture capital. In 1969, there were very few venture capitalists in America. Sounded good to me. I became a venture capitalist. I sold my life insurance company, and I collected $100,000 in cash. That's all the money I had. And so I started out as a venture capitalist. Along the way, I developed relationship with lots of friends and associates. I joined a fraternity. It was very helpful to me. I had never lived away from home. And when I moved in the fraternity house, I had no car, but my fraternity brothers had more affluent families. So one of my fraternity brothers his father was a doctor, I remember. He had got a new Buick convertible every year. I used to double date with him. I also found out about cashmere. He owned 20 cashmere sweaters. You know, I didn't know what cashmere was when I went to school. But anyway, he was wonderful, and so I learned to live with other young men. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know living in an immigrant family. And when I graduated from Iowa, I didn't want to interview for a job, and that's how I ended up in insurance, because I didn't want to work for anybody else. And so back to venture capital, I had $100,000, so I told all my friends that I was going to be a venture capitalist. And one of my friends' father owned a bank in Des Moines, named Richard Russell, and his father owned the Highland Park State Bank. And so I opened an office. I didn't have anything to do. Sitting there at a desk and a telephone, and the telephone rang, and Charles Russell called me, president of the bank. He says, John, he says, I understand you're a venture capitalist. I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He said, well, I've got somebody here that needs some money. He says, can you come to the bank? I said, yes, sir. So I had a car at that time, went out to the bank, and this gentleman wanted to start a lawnmower company. He was running a lawnmower company in Des Moines, and Charles Russell said, John, he says, how much money have you got? And I said, I have $100,000. He said, okay, I'll bet you $100,000, and my bank will loan them $500,000. So we started a lawnmower company. Well, wasn't the greatest investment in the world. So 5 years later, I got my money back, and I was very, very lucky, and I was a happy venture capitalist. But then what happened? I had a gentleman call on me who was looking for money that had a medical company, and he was from San Diego. He came in to see me, and I had my money back from the lawnmower manufacturing company. And he said, "Are you interested in investing in my company?" And I said, "Yes." And this company owned all the patents for hot pack and cold packs that you use, the chemical packs. And he said, "Can you raise some money for me?" I said, "I'll give you my money. I'll invest my money with you, and I'll raise some money for you." So we started this little company called K Laboratories. And K Laboratories, we took it public. We went public, and we were having a hard time selling enough product to make a profit. So we kept raising more money and raising more money. Finally, Baxter Travenol, a little company that's around today, big company, came in and made us an offer. We sold out to Baxter Travenol, and I made my first $1 million. And that was almost 40 years ago, 38 years ago. And that got me started. That little company called K Laboratories, my first VP of sales and marketing was James Sweeney. He and I started Caremark together. Caremark was a home run for me. That was the first home health care company in America. I invested probably only $50,000, and I made $18 million. Home run early on in my career. My next VP of sales and marketing was Tony Lazos. We started the first MRI. I set up 60 MRI centers in America. That was a home run. Went public. That was a home run. I made many millions of dollars. My next VP of sales and marketing was Richard Turner, who ended up being my best CEO. And so we started a little company called Pancratech, and that was the first insulin pump. We sold that to Abbott Laboratories. Another home run. And then Dick Turner and I ended up starting 3 public companies together. 5 years ago, we started ConMed, and we had a healthcare system in 60 jails. Home run, we sold it, and then Dick Turner and I started buying urgent care centers about 6 months ago. My best CEO died on me 5 weeks ago, suddenly. And so these are the things that happen in life. And I have a philosophy that problems create adversity is a blessing in disguise if you learn how to solve your problems. So to make a long story short, I am now CEO of that company until I find another CEO. But I have found a gentleman that came in to run the company for me, and I'm very happy with him. And in the meantime, I am buying urgent care centers in the southeastern part of the country. I expect to own 30 to 40 by December of this year. I'm raising about $20 to $25 million in the next 30 to 60 days. So I'm in the urgent care center business. So medical space has always been of interest to me. It's a wonderful business, but like any business, you can do it well or you don't do it well. And so you as physicians, potential physicians and PAs and whatever your specialty is going to be, you gotta work to be the best. You gotta be the best at what you do. I know all kinds of physicians that barely make a living, and I know physicians that make millions every year. And the difference is not only smarts, but PMA, positive mental attitude, desire to pay the price, to do good. You're in school, you're lucky, You're lucky to be here to start with. You're lucky to be able to be a physician and get a degree, and especially in this school. But it's up to you on how well you do. And the challenge is every day is your challenge. Whatever you do, you've got to be better. You've got to be willing to pay the price. For 30 years, I woke up at 4 o'clock every morning. My wife, I'm married to the fantastic woman, been married 53 years to the same woman, I might add. So she makes my breakfast every morning. We now get up at 5 o'clock in the morning instead of 4 o'clock. I'm tapering off a little bit, but you know, it's a wonderful partnership, and it's helped me do well because my wife has been my partner. She supports me, and I've got to tell you, I have a daughter, a wonderful daughter, and my daughter always said, I don't want to marry anybody like my daddy. She said, I want my husband home every night. So she did marry a fabulous guy. He's home almost every night. And you know, there's a price to pay for success, and you've got to determine what you want out of life. Everybody doesn't have to want to be rich. Most people do want to be rich. My friend used to say, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to be rich, but most people aren't willing to pay the price. And you know, you got to put it in perspective that the opportunity today, this is America. The American dream is here, available to anybody who's willing to pay the price. And I'm part of that American dream. And I believe in it. I love it. I support it. And the benefits to me and my wife, we've given $100 million away as philanthropists, and we have more to give away. And the great thing about it, success, is to use your money to help other people get ahead and to succeed. And I think that as physicians, you have this wonderful opportunity to help people, help society. I went through the clinics with President Franklin. You have a non-for-profit clinic. I believe in charity. I believe in helping people that are disadvantaged. We have a scholarship fund, and it's to minorities, disadvantaged, and disabled. And you've got to help. You have to help people. Sometimes it can't help themselves. I've had a wonderful life, and I've had to pay the price. I've had bypass. I've had stents. I'm diabetic. And, you know, your profession has kept me alive. I was at Mayo Clinic this week for 3 days, and my doctor says, he says, you're great for your health. But he said to me, he says, don't forget, he says, you're still a used car. And you have to put it in perspective. I am a used car, and don't know tomorrow what's going to hurt, what's going to break down. But I know I'm going to solve it. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to stick around as long as I can. And I think that I'd give all my money to start out to be your age and start out all over again, because the trip is fantastic with the right perspective, positive mental attitude, and solve the problems along the way. Now, you'll all have adversity. And again, I want to mention that adversity is a blessing in disguise. Learn to solve your problems. Learn to solve your problems. And that will get you ahead. I have lots of medical company stories, and a lot of successes. And I've had some failures too. We like to talk about our successes, but we've had failures also. And the key to it is to work through those and try to create value the best you can with them, and then move on. So I'm here to answer questions. You all look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed here today, and you have again a wonderful opportunity to go out with the world, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I can go on for a long time, but I'd like to have questions to make it.
Questions here?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your donation to Des Moines and your sculpture park, which is one of the highlights of our city. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved in loving art so much?
Thank you. That's a great question. Growing up in an immigrant family, we had no art. We didn't know what art was. When I graduated from Iowa my senior year, I took a SLUF course. It was History and Appreciation of Art. I wanted a SLUF course. I had an amazing professor. And I'd never been in a museum in my life. You have to understand. And he'd show up these pictures of Impressionists and all these great artists. I liked art. It looks good to me. I liked it, My wife grew up in an immigrant family also. Her family came over from Greece. And they had no art. So we got married. In the first month we were married, I don't know why, we took a walk and we walked into a gallery here in Des Moines. And we bought a print for $50. That's how much money we had. And we still own that print. And that print is kind of a symbolism of where we started. And then all of a sudden, the art, we began to like art. I got invited to the board of the Des Moines Art Center. And we had a wonderful museum. His name was James Demetrian, wonderful director, who then went on to be director at the Hirshhorn. I've been on the Hirshhorn board now for 25 years. I followed Jim. I'm vice chairman of the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington. I'm in the National Gallery. I'm in the trustee council. My wife, I'm retired from the Des Moines Art Center. My wife is on the board at the Des Moines. She's on the board of the Walker in Minneapolis. We just all of a sudden accumulated this interest in art, and art's done something for us. Let me tell you what it is. We met a lot of wonderful people that we had never met before. Going to a museum, you meet people that have different interests, and most of them were obviously more affluent than we were, and they were all nice. You couldn't tell who was rich or who wasn't rich. Everybody liked art, and so all of a sudden we just created this interest. And I will tell you this, that art has also ended up being a very important part of our investment portfolio. Never bought art for an investment, but it is, if you read the papers today, you just can't believe what's happening to the art market. And so you can love something and it can end up having value, and that's what happened to art. So this interest in art just gradually accumulated. And then we had, once our house became full of art, then we started buying sculpture because we didn't have room in our house for more art. So we bought sculpture, and we put sculpture in our front yard and in our backyard. And on Sunday morning, there'd be a stream of cars driving past our house looking at the sculpture. We lived in this neighborhood, and there would be 6 or 8 cars driving by. So my wife says, honey, we got to find some place to put this art rather than our front yard. And so driving down Locust Avenue one day, and back in, I said to my wife, they were doing a rehab of all the old buildings here in Des Moines. And I said, honey, that's where art belongs. I called Christine Hensley, one of the Des Moines members of the city council. And I said, Chris, I got an idea. She said, sounds good to me. So we went, talked to the mayor, we talked to everybody. We said we want to donate our sculpture to the Des Moines Museum and to the city. And that's how it all happened. It happened very quickly. And the funny thing about it, I went to they were having a vote at the city council to approve it, and we got a standing ovation. They said that nobody had ever gotten a standing ovation for a gift before at the anyway. So that's how it all happened. And the good thing was that the city was just wonderful. The museums have been terrific. The public's been great, and we love the fact that people like art. And the good thing about the sculpture park, many of the people that go there have never been in the Des Moines Museum. There's a door at the museum, and you got to walk through that door, and you don't know what's behind it, and you don't know whether they're going to charge you money or anything. And the great thing about the sculpture park, it's accessible. It's open. There's no fence. And that's why I think the reason that it has been accepted by the community, because it's open to everybody, and we're just delighted. And we keep buying pieces when we can afford them, and we're looking for another piece now. We keep adding as we can because we think the park is a very important part of the community, and we think it has helped a lot of people who were never exposed to art to feel kindred and to feel like they could feel warm and fuzzy about a piece of art. Questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your very exciting and intriguing story of your entrepreneurialism. It's obvious when you were very young you were an entrepreneur, and I think that's synonymous with leadership. And so I would like you to share with us perhaps what you think are a few of the traits or characteristics of an effective leader. And is there a few things that you've gleaned over your years that you wish you had known when you were starting out?
Yes. Multi questions. When I started out, I was very lucky because I didn't really know what I didn't know, and I was persistent enough. For instance, when I started my life insurance company, I had never been in the home office of a life insurance company, so you got to understand it takes a lot of bravado to say I'm going to start a life insurance company. And a man influenced me, that helped me arrive at this. His name was W. Clement Stone. He was president of Combined Insurance Company of America. He was a very wealthy guy in Chicago, Illinois. And I happened to be president of the life insurance underwriters in Mason City, Iowa. And I wrote this gentleman and asked him to be a speaker in Mason City, Iowa. After 2 or 3 years, he finally agreed. I was persistent. So he flew to the airport at Mason City, Iowa, and I picked him up in a Volkswagen, which is what I was driving. I found out later that he had a 600, I never heard of a 600 Mercedes. He had a chauffeured Mercedes 600 that used to drive him around in Chicago. But anyway, he came to Mason City, and he got in my car, and he said, Pappajohn, why don't you start a life insurance company? I said, I don't have any money. He says, you don't need any money. He says, buy my book. Now, he didn't offer me a free book. He says, buy my book. And his book is how PMA, and how to, I got to get this right, success with a positive mental attitude. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, you can achieve. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe. And that's been my mantra ever since. I've been very positive on it. So I don't, and my wife will tell you, I hate to brag about this, I have never been depressed in my life. I have never been depressed. I can take adversity. I sleep. If I got a problem, I go home, and my wife gets angry at me because I put my head down and I sleep. Pow. And so I'm blessed with that, because otherwise I probably would be dead today. And so I'm a very positive person. I'm persistent. I have great work ethic habits. I have a wonderful group of people that will help me, and I help them. I go out of my way. I volunteer. You know, in life, you're a combination. One of the ways to improve yourself is to copy those things that you see in people that you like. This from her and this from him. If you copy all of those attributes, pretty soon it's part of you, because that's the way we assimilate. That's the way we become what we are. So I copy people. I copy people, and it really helps. And I read, and I know what it takes in order to be successful. But I'm very persistent. I've been smart enough in my work habit And I do something else. I'm always looking for the next home run, the next major breakthrough. In medicine, I've been first in a lot of areas, and that's where the money is. In other words, by being early in areas, I was the first home health care company. I had the first roll-up of MRI centers. I had the early insulin pump. In other words, I had the first infant ventilator in the world that was developed by one of my companies. And so I'm always looking. I want to be, so you read to try to be ahead of other people. In the media, it's all in print, but you have to take it, and it's easy to think it's the action that counts. Some people, I hate to use this word, I call it mental masturbation. The point is you got to act. It doesn't do any good to just toss these things in your head all the time and don't do anything about it. And so the point is you have to act. So by doing that, that's how you get there. You know, you don't have to be smart. You just copy it. And that's it. Well, pretty simple. It's really simple. You can be what you want to be, and that's the way you do it. Questions? Yes.
So, as an entrepreneur, how do you see healthcare in the next coming years?
Well, that's a great question. I was very concerned when the Obamacare was announced. I'm not as concerned today. First of all, healthcare will always be a major opportunity and a problem for the world. There's no question we have to take care of everybody in the world. There's no question. The only question is how, and I don't know that there's a perfect way, but I see the opportunities are still there. The only way today, whatever you invent or whatever you do, you've got to come up with reduction of healthcare costs. It's got to be something that is going to reduce costs. You're seeing reimbursements coming way down, margins are way down. There was a time when margins were 60-80%, and that's all gone. That's all history. And so, but the opportunities are there. I think that I'm in the urgent care center business because 25% of the population, 30% of the population don't have a physician. There are not enough physicians. So we are providing, I think, a great area is to be a PA. I think PA is a fabulous area. Even a nurse practitioner. There are so many different provider opportunities. And so I think you just got to figure out where you fit in the system. And I think the opportunities are there. And I think that I'm starting next week. I'm doing a new medical deal with the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. It's the third biggest cancer center in America. And I'm doing it in immune therapy, which is a hot new area in cancer therapy. It's a spin-off of there. One of my associates and I are doing this, and very exciting. I'm working with Sloan Kettering. I do a lot with Sloan Kettering. One of my very exciting new companies. I'm in the genetic space. I'm now doing clinical work with 12 biopharmaceutical companies at this time. One of my very exciting companies. And that company early on had some problems. I financed it. It was up, down, but it's going to the sky now. So, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again, and sometimes you just have to be persistent. If you know you're right, you gotta your gut instinct. You gotta know, get that feeling that you know what you're doing is right, and you're doing the right thing, and you're going to make it. And I think the healthcare opportunities are absolutely will continue, but you've got to figure out where you fit in the system. Any other questions? Yes?
Of all the glamorous places in the world that you could live, why are you in Boyd, Iowa?
So that's a wonderful question. You know what? My wife and I live here by choice. We love the people. I got to tell you, When I first went to Wall Street, I remember the guy said to me once, he said, "Where are you from, kid?" I says, "Des Moines, Iowa." He says, "Thank God," he says, "you're not from Palo Alto." Well, I want you to understand, there's a plus. The people in Des Moines, the people in Iowa are as good as any place in the world. The people are nice, they're honest, they're sincere. I grew up here, and I have an affinity to it, and I pay lots more money in taxes here than I would in Florida or other places. So I live here by choice, and my wife and I like it, but we don't like the harsh winters, so I can't lie about that. So we've spent this last year, we spent like 2 months and 2.5 months in Florida, and in the winter, and it's wonderful. But we like it here. We love it here. I have two brothers that live in Mason City with their families, but their children are all over the country. But I was home, and so that's why we live here. Questions? Easy crowd, easy group, easy group. Yes?
You opened up talking about debt. So what do you think about our national debt and our money?
Well, that's something that you and I can do very little about, unfortunately. We just have to learn to live within the system. It doesn't make any difference who's in charge of politics. It's obvious our country has commitments, and I'm not very political. I'm a moderate. Always been a moderate. I just do what I have to do, and I don't get embroiled. I support those candidates that I like, and I don't let it bother me in my business. I just, as Yugi says, I do what I got to do, and that's my lifestyle. So I can't do anything about it. I only worry about things that I can control. Yes?
Other than your father and your wife, who would you say is somebody that you look up to and have the utmost respect for? Whether it's somebody of higher stature or...
Well, lots of people. I don't think there's any. I don't think that I've had a mentor that I was real close to. That lots of people have helped me along the way, but nobody that significant. I guess I can't. I can't think of anybody. I like people, and I find that people like to help people, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because everybody helps. Everybody helps everybody, and most people are worried about asking for help, and don't ask. That's how you get ahead. And if you got a problem, all kinds of people will stick their neck out to assist you. That's been my experience, and I go out of my way to help also. I think that's one of the attributes that all of us should try to do. Any other questions? Let me off early.
I have a question.
Yes.
So we have a health pass program here today, and I'm just wondering if you could just give our students sort of one piece of advice to keep them motivated and to keep them going in the face of adversity. Just sort of one thing that sort of kept you going through adversity.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, the health pass of students in the program.
Thing that you keep in your mind when you're going through adversity and when you're going through struggle in your life to kind of, I don't know, have sort of a light at the end of the tunnel that you focus on.
Well, I never get off the track. So, so you understand, when I know what I'm going to do, I don't get off the track. So the point is, you have to be so committed to what you want to do, that those other things, you just push them aside and you figure out a way of solving them. And you can always solve a problem. And if you can't solve it on your own, you can get help. You can get help. And so you have to perhaps figure out, it's not always brute force. It's how do I circumvent around this problem? Who can I go to? Who can help me? You're in a facility here. If you have a problem, you can start with the president, Angela. I know. Sorry about that, Angela. But she's, you know what? She's a perfect example from when she came. Think about where she grew up. And she started out, she's like one of most of us. And you dream and you work your way at it and you get some luck along the way and you take advantage of it. In the meantime, you and I know she has problems. She's had problems along the way, but look where she is. And she's not finished yet. The point is that she's helped create this and expand this organization. So to me, you have to have focus. You got to have focus and purpose and commitment. That's probably the right word. Enough of a commitment that you can't get off the track. You just keep focusing on it, and you can get help and solve it. And it may sound easy to some of you that have serious problems, but you can resolve yourself, and you can read a lot of books, a lot of self-help books of people that have had those problems that have solved them. And it's commitment. You can get there.
There's one hand up there. Dr. Shaw?
Yeah, I've got a question about the healthcare cost in the U.S. As you might know, we spend about 16% of our GDP on the healthcare cost. Still, we are not the best. So any business solution you might have suggested us, or what's the direction you might take to reduce our healthcare cost?
Well, I think it's 18%, not 16. Isn't it 18 now? Well, the problem, you know what? Maybe God can't solve that problem. Well, everybody's working on it. I'll tell you right now, I had a colonoscopy on Wednesday of this week at Mayo Clinic. And let me tell you what my doctor said. At your age, there won't be any more colonoscopies. Medicare won't pay for any more. So this is your last colonoscopy. And you know what? That's what's happening. All of a sudden, in order to bring costs down, there are going to be some decisions made that there will not be any reimbursement. So that's how, it reminds me of in Greek mythology, way back, that when people got old, the way they used to solve the problem, they'd take them up to a cliff and push them over the cliff. That's how they solved the old age. That was way back in Greek mythology. Well, the point is that it's going to get to the point where lots of older people are not going to get the care. It's not going to be reimbursed. And unfortunately, that's the way that costs are going to be reimbursed. So as providers, our job is to do the best that we can to help everybody at the lowest cost and to don't abuse the system. I think that's in the past, there's probably been a lot of abuse in the system, and the abuse is gradually going to disappear. And so reimbursement, I'll give you another example of myself. 2 years ago, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning here in Des Moines, and I had pain in my stomach, and serious pain. And so I told my wife, take me to the emergency room of the hospital, which she did. And the doctor says, I don't know what the problem is. We couldn't figure it out. I had an appendectomy before. Make a long story short, he says, well, so let me think. The only thing I can think of is it's diverticulitis. I think it must be diverticulitis. So make a long story short, they gave me IVs, everything. The bill was probably $3,000. Medicare turned the bill down. And Medicare said, the doctor should have been smart enough to send you to an urgent care center. Well, there are no urgent care centers open at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I'm just telling you that that's a trend that you're going to see, that the reimbursement is really going to get tougher and tougher. And I think as providers, that's how the costs, they're going to try to control the costs. And you're seeing it every day now. And so, but they can't keep them constant because there will be some inflationary increase. But that's, we're in America, we are used to the best health care, and we have the best health care system in the world. And so I think we'll always be the best, but it's going to get a lot tighter in control. And as providers, you will be part of that. You will be part of that system. Any more? One more question? That's it? Anybody? Last chance. All right, there's one hand. That's it.
I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I'd like to know from you, what tips would you give her as it relates to debt, and what things could I start doing with her now so that she doesn't incur debt in the future? What practices are good practices to start an 11-year-old?
Well, I'm the wrong one to ask. I couldn't train my daughter not to spend money. You know what? It's a real art to teach children frugality. And I'll give you an example. I go to the farmers market every Saturday morning here in Des Moines. I think it's fabulous. I go to the Asian booths. Those people are so fabulous with their children. Those kids that are in the booth, they know how to manage money at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. My daughter couldn't manage a checkbook in college. And so, and I love my daughter, and she still spends money, by the way. She's married, but her husband has to take care of it now. The point is that early on, you have to start to try to teach them that honey, here's where it is, and here's what the dollar's worth, and I think probably starting out with a very small allowance and let them learn to try to manage. That's the way. I didn't have a problem because I didn't have any money, and so as a kid, all the money I made, scrap, whatever it was, I always put it in the bank because my parents used to tell me, if you want to go to college, you got to put your money in the bank. So you've got to come up with something that clicks with her. And I think that it's very important to try to teach children frugality. And I hope you're successful because it is not an easy challenge.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Good luck. Let me tell you. Well, thank you. I told you I'd give all my money to you to start all over again with your youth and age. You got a wonderful future. Take advantage of it. Pay the price. Get up a little earlier in the morning. Do something a little extra. Do all those things that will make you successful. God bless you all. This is a wonderful country. God bless America, and God bless you all.